Welcome to another episode of Devs on Tape podcast. Today we are on the first day of Apex Connect in Düsseldorf this year in the Thunderfuck Hotel near the airport, and we are having a great guest from America here with us. So first of all, hello Caro.
Hi Kai.
This is very important. I'm missing that each and every time when we have
every time?
Okay. It was a little bit drastic, but not every time, but most of the time. All right. Our guest, Kris Rice from America. Hi, Kris.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are very proud to have you in this podcast. We are aiming for that for a couple of years, but you were not attending the same conferences as we were. And yeah, so maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners.
Oh, sure. So like you said, my name's Kris. I do whole bunches of things at Oracle these days. Apex Connect predominantly, ORDS, and I run operations teams for a lot of the Apex S setups and installations. We also do tons of work on cloud. My team helped build multi-cloud with the interlinks with Azure. We've helped re-architect Cerner. We're currently rebuilding content management systems. We do a whole bunch of different things.
Not exclusively in Apex, right? All these
Not exclusively in Apex. For example, OCI console is React. So my team does a lot of React code.
Mm-hmm. Why not Oracle Jet?
It's in process of moving to Jet.
Mm-hmm.
So when OCI started, what is it now, 5 years maybe? I think they just went and hired, the people that came from AWS, from Azure and whatnot, and React is what they're most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So they built up a pretty good framework with React, but now it's time and that's going to be sunset and we're pivoting to Jet.
And maybe another excursion to Apex in future. I mean, you're at Apex Connect, right? So we might influence you to get everything up and running in Apex.
Yeah, maybe. We do have customers that have done that. They've built their own kind of mini cloud consoles using Apex and using all the OCI REST APIs and whatnot.
That's definitely a direction I'm going to see in the next years, I guess. I was looking at me because she's very well prepared. And
the person with notes is looking at the person without notes.
Exactly.
I've looked into your LinkedIn profile, obviously. And there was a really nice text because you just told, yeah, you do that, you did that, your team does that. But you also have in your LinkedIn profile that you are thrived to support developers, Oracle developers, and very much energy and tools like the SQL developer or the tools for the Visual Studio Code. And yeah, you already wrote you want to support Oracle developers. What is your passion about this?
Well, I mean, we need developers to use our technologies, right? So the reality of today is that developers want easier features, easier functions, easier development, right? So we have to make it easier for them. For example, the rewrite of SQL Developer into VSCode, I think it's non-debatable. VSCode is taken over, right? I mean, it's what everybody uses these days. So why shouldn't it have the best support we can for database? And even within there, in VSCode, the thing we're trying to do is interact with VSCode itself. Because if we just put our tools in and it's in a silo, it's of limited value. For example, some of the things that are being done right now with our interns in Morocco is from SQL Developer inside VSCode, interacting with Python and Java files also in VSCode. So from VSCode SQL Dev, you can drag and we'll create connections using, the native Node libraries or Java libraries or whatever straight into your Java files and whatnot.
So do you see the VS Code SQL Developer version is the only thing in the future we will see, or is the SQL Developer, the Java edition of that, still in the focus for the next 10 years?
10 might be too much.
100?
100 is way too much. That's someone else's problem.
Yeah.
So SQL Developer is actually about 5 million lines of Java code.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot to move. So it's going to take us a while to get everything moved over, but I do think the VS Code will be the dominant one.
Mm-hmm.
And because of things, like I said, where we're going to interact with other things in VS Code, it's going to be the dominant one, my guess, in the next 12 to 18 months.
Oh, right. That quick. Okay, so how many years were you developing on the VS Code edition?
So it took us a long time to get it going because the underlying technology under VS Code, we wanted to make sure everything was done right and properly. For example, we built a virtual file system underneath VS Code that actually maps into the database.
Mm-hmm.
So when you pull up a table, if you look, it acts like it acts like folders and files. You can actually navigate and get the file-based drop downs. And then there's a language protocol server for how VS Code talks to effectively the back end. So getting portions of Ords and portions of SQL Dev Web, SQL Dev Desktop, speaking that language protocol securely, took a little bit to work out. It's actually running the same SQL Dev Java code under the covers, and uses WebSockets to talk back and forth securely.
I remember back in the days that you had a Twitter post. It was Twitter back then, searching for JavaScript developers, right?
Yes.
Exactly for this. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Was it that long
Yeah,
ago?
probably about that.
And that was the whole time when you were developing the VS Code edition, right? And then at some point there were some curious screenshots, and we all were waiting for the new version and to get our hands on it. And now it's very, very nice to use.
Are you using it?
Yeah. Not that heavily because I'm not developing that much.
Because you're talking more than writing code now?
Busted.
Busted, exactly. So there might be a couple of people who might listen to this podcast and are laughing right now. So we might just add a little pause because they're exactly saying that. He's talking more and not coding anymore. And they're very happy about that.
Oh, that's a good thing?
For some of them, I guess. There might be some code lines from me in the wild, but they tried to kill it. No, I saw that and I was very, very looking forward to use it. And then I stopped developing and then the tool came out. So
Yeah.
But yeah, the splash screen from the Java edition of SQL Developer, which leads to get a coffee, is past.
Yes.
Sorry, from the past.
So I have a question for this. I just ask it now and not later. Because I'm using Visual Studio Code for a while now, for a few years. And in all these years, there came several extensions for PL/SQL, like from Adrian, I think, this PL/SQL library, and then Apex library, and then I had to write it down, the Oracle developer tools for VS Code. And then now we have the SQL developer extension for VS Code. And I'm wondering, what should I use especially of them both, when I develop PL/SQL and database development?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be biased, right? So the SQL developer one for sure. And like I said, we have a lot more coming, and we'll be doing more integrations with Apex, with Liquibase. The other big thing going over there is a lot of people use the modeler. So they do logical, relational, physical modeling. That's all in process of being ported over to the VS Code one as well. So that's only going to get richer and richer. And if you look at SQL Developer Desktop, you can pretty much tell what's going to come over. I mean, there's probably some features we don't have to bring over because maybe, we didn't think right on how it should have been built, or people didn't use it. For some of the examples, right, is we did a lot of work on OLAPs and cubes and spatial and stuff like that, and it's marginally used in SQL Dev. So those ones will be, on the tail end of bringing everything over.
Okay, and you are also developing the SQL developer for web?
SQL Developer Web, yep.
This is the same base. So what we get there, we can get in Visual Studio Code and vice versa?
To a degree. So that's actually, I don't know. Again, I'm biased. I think it's one of the coolest things we've done is we've got the same Java base underneath SQL Developer Desktop, underneath SQL Developer Web, underneath VS Code, and underneath SQLcl. So for better or worse, they should be bug for bug compatible. So if you hit bug in one, you'll hit the bug in the other ones.
If you introduce one bug, you have it on all the different platforms, vice versa, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be my next question. So if you're working on the same solution on different platforms, if it's hard to have it working on all the places at the same time. But yeah, sounds great.
And I've also, it's a very specific thing, but I think it's a good step to understanding the performance and what the optimizer does, etc. More I've seen in the SQL Developer Web. We have in the explain plan this, chart.
There's three visualizations of the explain plan in SQL Dev Web. There's the kind of a hierarchy chart one, I think is what you meant, where we kind of boil it down and say, 20% took here, 30% took here. That's actually in the VS Code one coming out soon, like in a few days. And there's also a flame chart in there for people that like the flame chart representation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the traditional grid of data.
I think it's a really nice step. So was it something like or we want to make it more easier for the developers or people.
Correct. Back to what you asked before, right? Why enabling developers? It's all about making it easier. I don't know. People seem to not know the history of things anymore. So people that can read the rows and grids of data of an explain plan, we're in a more visual world these days. So we try to bring that more visual experience over the same data set, and people seem to understand it easier.
Do you have any other feature that might come up soon, which also visualize more?
Caro, we are still 11 minutes in the podcast.
I'm excited about this topic.
All right, then we just sneak it in at about 11 minutes in the podcast. Do you have any information for our listeners that no one else heard before?
That no one's heard before. So the next big thing coming for SQL Dev VSCode is an SDK so that other people can integrate. For example, the UTPL SQL team, they want to be able to integrate so you can right-click on a procedure and say, generate a unit test.
Yeah.
They did this in the old SQL developer, but we didn't give them a SDK yet to do that. So that's coming there. We'll go product by product to answer your question.
Yeah. Oh, we got more than one announcement.
In SQLcl, of course, we've had Liquidbase now for a little bit for doing change management, for schema evolutions, things like that. We're working with a handful of teams inside Oracle to come out with a better way to orchestrate that. So if you think about a project, the project has an Apex app, it has a table, it has a procedure, it has everything. And you might want to pack that project up as a deployable artifact and scan it, SQL injection, scan it, do all the things you're supposed to do, and then deploy it. So that's coming there. Let's see. In SQL Dev Web, we're working on overhauling the REST workshop. So one of the feedbacks we got was, hey, the visuals of the workshop are great, but doing it at scale with hundreds of REST APIs, not so much, is way too much clicking, way too much interaction. So we're completely overhauling that. My team is working on a number of Apex projects. So I don't know how many people are doing Fusion Apps integration with Apex, but we're working on making that easier, down to one click, hopefully, is the goal. And then the other one that's getting announced here at Apex Connect is we're actually working on a language underneath Apex. So what that means is no more f100.sql file. It will be a human readable, diffable, changeable, editable, AI generatable code file underneath Apex.
That's a huge announcement. That sounds really great.
This is really cool.
I was expecting some AI and machine learning integration into Apex and all the products, and I was always asking myself, in which extent is it possible for now? Is it generating SQL statements based on your data? Or we talked about that with Connor in November, I think. But I was just expecting something like that for Apex too, so that you can just talk into a microphone and have everything recognized or write a short text, and Apex is creating everything.
Have the application generate. We've actually done early testing, right? So this is all super early testing of taking this language, because we're going to make it based on a proper grammar and training an AI on that grammar and have it then turn around and generate the apps. But I think we all know that, right, the AIs are as good as they are, and they're going to do exactly what we tell them. Hopefully, which is probably not what we asked for.
Yeah. I mean, you should have developers who are able to write code to have an application, and now you're expecting the developers to speak a certain grammar, right? You have you need them to write proper text to generate an application from. So this is another challenge for many developers, I think. But yeah, so this is a new feature for all Apex enthusiasts.
Yeah, so maybe you don't have to. Yeah, maybe you have to click once in the future and then just generate your app with
maybe, who knows, right? The other problem with the current state of AI code generation is, okay, the AI generated the code, now who's going to fix a bug?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
another AI, maybe.
Another AI. A sustaining support AI.
Yeah.
And most people say, just put the code into ChatGPT and say, this is the bug which is coming up, so fix it. They're doing it, don't know, 1 million times or so.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've tried a few things with ChatGPT. Like, I've taken intentionally poorly written SQL and said, hey, can you tune this? And it said, nope, it's all tuned, it's all good. It's like, I'm not so sure about that.
Kind of a compliment, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I actually used GitHub Copilot once and put in a procedure which is terribly written. So a lot of context switches, etc. And I said, make this better. And actually it made it better, really, really good. Yeah. So the result was really good.
Yeah, when it works great. There was somebody else that asked me, why hasn't Oracle written a YAML parser in PL/SQL? I was like, because I don't want to. So I went to ChatGPT and said, write me a PL/SQL YAML parser, and it did. I sent the guy the question, but I didn't try it, so who knows if it works.
Quick support. Okay, maybe we can take a little step back from the technology talk and learn to know a little bit more about you, Kris. So maybe we could start in the beginning, but I have seen that you had, like, after 25 or almost 26 years at Oracle, a promotion to senior vice president at Oracle.
Yes, I hit 26 years, I think, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time.
It's a very long time. So from vice president to senior vice president is not only because of the age, right?
It is not just because of the age. That's what I tell people, joke, but no. I mean, we've done a lot of work. For example, we got pulled in to re-architect Cerner when Cerner was brought in with Oracle. We did a lot of work with them to try and make a path forward for them, using Ords Apex as much as possible, but also helping them burn down their technical debt and whatnot. And then other things I've done that have pretty big impact is like the multi-cloud support. So we've built now 2 variations of multi-cloud, and my team was heavily involved in all of that.
And so how did your work change from vice president to senior vice president?
I had to get new cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the senior. So there wasn't a big change for you in the company. It's just rising up and having a bigger team, I guess.
Yeah, there was no real actual change, I don't think. It's just more, I guess, maybe more pressure, more whatever. I was already in, I don't think a single conversation changed in terms of anything else.
So, but what is keeping you like 26 years in the same company?
That is a great question.
Thank you very much. And that's the answer I always get when someone needs some time to think about that.
That's the buffer.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I have a lot of fun with what I do. I like the work I do. I like the people I work with. My team is awesome. Most of the teams we work with are great to work with. So it's a good environment. I like it. So it's kept me around.
It's pretty nice because everyone tells me that.
I think there is a pivot, though, in the industry, it feels like. Like a lot of the new kids are like 3, 4, 5 years, and then they switch companies a lot. Because we'll go to some of these meetings with like the OCI people, and it cracks me up every time because they'll be like, oh, I've been in OCI forever. I've been here 4 years. It's like, that's cute.
I think that's the time now, right? So they're just jumping from job to job, startups maybe somehow involved in that. But how did you start at Oracle?
So I started in Oracle in 98, which hopefully math-wise is 26 ago. I started in Oracle Consulting. Actually, my first project was for a German company, Bertelsmann. So Bertelsmann wanted to build an e-commerce site before Amazon got to Europe. So we worked with them for quite a while. And my first trip to Germany was Gütersloh.
Gütersloh, okay.
Which I haven't been back, so it didn't seem like a big town at the time. I don't think it's much.
No, I don't think so too. So this is not worth a visit, I think.
And then because we were successful with them, we got asked to go out and fix/build the e-commerce products Oracle was building. So Oracle pulled me out to headquarters. We worked on that for a little bit. And then I met Mike Hichua, and we were working on a project for Larry. And I can't remember what it was that switched. It was HTMLDB 1.6, maybe something, well before it shipped. And we were talking, and we just decided I should move over to his team. And that's where I've been since. So I've been here 26 years and I've had 2 managers.
Yeah, that's maybe the reason why you're staying so long, right? Because you're very successful with them. Great. So right before that, you were just a developer at Global Image. Is it right?
I was. So that was a Microsoft consulting company. Funny thing there is we built McGraw-Hill is a huge book publishing company in the US. I don't know if they're over here. They must be, right? These days. We actually wrote we're so young, we're not that into books, I guess. Well, they do a lot of textbooks, universities. They still use textbooks, I think, right?
Yeah.
We actually wrote big old VB, Visual Basic macro in Word that scraped their catalog out of Sybase and built it for print.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. So
no, I don't think so.
Visual Basic. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. And right before that, You were
So before that is where I got introduced to Oracle. I worked for the name of the company was Missouri Employers Mutual. They did workers' compensation insurance. So if you get hurt on the job, they pay for the insurance to cover your wages. And that's where I got introduced to Oracle. So it was Oracle 713, I think it was, on a DEC Alpha, which those chips don't even exist anymore. But they were cool because it was a 64-bit chip in 97.
And I've also seen, or you spoke about it before our recording session. You have a ice hockey team or hockey?
I do. So you're sitting here, we're recording here today, looking at the local ice rink. I didn't look up the team name, but I did see they had a red jersey.
DEG, I think. Is it DEG? Düsseldorf ice hockey?
Unfortunately, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I think it's one of the better ice hockey teams in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, and the league over here is very good. But yeah, I play right now once a week. In the winter, there's more ice rinks. So I skate 2 or 3 times a week there. And my team had their championship last night, which I guess the guys won.
But you were not attending, you were traveling to Apex Connect.
I was at Apex Connect over my team's championship. That's right.
It's an honor.
It's an honor, yeah. So,
but it's fun. It keeps, it's good exercise. It's a lot of work.
So back to tech.
Okay.
Is it a category? Is it a category to go back to tech?
For me, I just wanted to wait if you have any other personal questions before we can go to the...
I mean, there would be some, but we can ask them later.
Okay. I've already told, I put some notes in there, and I've seen that you, for example, you also put SQLcl to a public web page, so everybody can
Git
use
repo, a public Git repo.
Yeah, so everybody can use it. And I thought about, are there any plans to build it into the SQL developer web?
Yeah. So I'll answer you in 2 parts. One is the reason we made it into a standalone library is so that anyone could use it.
Yeah.
So anyone could put it, for example, into their pipeline to generate DDL or whatever, with the shorter syntax. And then that also allows us personally to use it in all of our other products so that we can scatter it through everywhere. So it is coming in the new live SQL, which we're rewriting, and it's coming in SQL Dev Web. Probably VSCode will be the last one it comes to.
And are there any plans? So I'm just asking questions. I already want
questions.
Are there any plans? Because currently it's only to create a new model. And are there any plans to maybe update, so alter statements and something like this?
We've debated it. So the problem is you lose the definition, a lot of the definition of what's in the database. So for example, you put compound indexes in, you do partitioning, you do whatever. SQL doesn't support any of that. So you lose that fidelity. So we've kind of shied away from pulling it back to do alters and updates for that reason. I don't know, maybe it could, maybe it should. I don't know, but that's where we're at.
Okay, so no specific plans, just some thoughts and brainstorming.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Because I was very happy when I've seen it, because I once worked with a Java project. They use also something like similar library to create their data models and then put it into Liquibase and then deploy it, etc. And so I just wondered, because this one could update the database model.
It could. I mean, you'd lose some fidelity if you start pushing the boundaries of what it is, right? And the goal is never to replace fully DDL, because replacing that is just the gift that never stops, because DDL is constantly changing the database. So we don't want to have 2 languages.
So I have a question about PDF and document generation service you started. So it might be a little bit controversial.
Uh-oh.
So in the Apex environment, we have a couple of solutions that were created, like Anton Schäfer, I think, was the first solution that you had a SQL package that was generating documents. And then we have the, let me call it go-to solution from United Codes, AOP. And they are doing exactly this for a decade, I think, already. Yes. Awesome. How do you differentiate between the different products? Or are you planning to even enable more people to use the PDF and document generation service without having a subscription for OCI, for example?
Well, let's go back to where it all started. So I don't know, probably you never met him. There was a guy named Carl Backstrom that used to be in the Apex team. He lived in California. We hired him in. So going back to where I started, we hired him in before I moved and reported to Mike Hitchwa. So he came in at that era, and he was playing with FOP and Apache Cocoon and said, hey, we could generate PDFs. So that's where the PDF stuff came from. And way back, it used to be that you had to deploy your own Tomcat and deploy this code that we wrote on the side and use the XML FOP to talk to it back and forth. So then fast forward, we baked that into Ords. The problem that we hit, though, was we used Apache Batic under the covers. And it's actually in my talks this week, is Oracle has a rule that if an open source library is effectively abandoned, meaning it hasn't had zero updates in like, say, 2-3 years, it's a no-go. You're not allowed to use it. So we had to deprecate that support. And in parallel, people started switching to BI Publisher, which is another way to do it as well. We never conceded that we weren't going to be back, but we didn't have a way to do it yet. And then fast forward, we have OCI, we have cloud, we have functions, we have all this. And the demand internally has gone up. There's some teams inside Oracle, for example, that need to do about 40,000 invoices a week, I think is what they said. And it's all Python hand-coded PDF generation. So maybe the corollary would be, and maybe it's the one you were talking about, there used to be a PL PDF, PL SQL.
Exactly, yeah.
So similar concept to that, but hard-coded in Python. So anytime one of their vendors needed to update the logo, it was a Python program, literal Python code that had to change.
Okay.
Which is probably worst case, right? Versus templated patterns that we have. So that's where all this stuff got born from. That's where we're at. Are we going to close gaps? Of course, we're going to keep progressing, but we're going to progress based on what we need internally. And hopefully it lines up with what everyone else needs as well.
So it stays in the cloud, right?
Stays in the cloud, zero intention to ship it on-prem.
Okay.
And then back to your question about without a cloud license. Functions, technically, you have to have a paid subscription to use functions. But have you ever looked at the pricing on functions?
No, I'm using my ACE credits right now.
So functions, right? Time of this recording, functions, you're allowed 2 million function calls per month. And they measure it in terms of memory CPU, I think. I can't remember the exact words, but it's 300,000 gigabyte CPUs. So 1 gigabyte of memory, 300,000 seconds worth of CPU time.
Okay, that would be enough to generate a couple of documents, I guess.
Yeah.
At least a couple big ones.
Okay. Yeah, Carol gave me a hint that the pricing is on our screen here right now. So
I put the screenshot from
it's very cheap.
Even if it's over the 2 million, I'm seeing that it's like
fractions of
a penny. Yeah, right.
So it's very, very competitive price-wise. I would wager that most people would never cross the boundary and do even a penny, right? I mean, that's a lot of documents.
Yeah, that's true. And you could also set up your own cloud and just use this then. Yeah. Even if your database is not on.
Correct. And it's OCI, which means you actually get OCI. It's part of the OCI SDK, the OCI REST APIs. So it has nothing per se to do directly with database. You can just use it on the Python program could call it, for example.
40,000 invoices just running through.
That's a good problem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So we have the new feature for ORDS. We have Quick SQL. We have the whole SQL developer thing. We've asked. I also have the topic SQLcl on my list. And to be true, it's not a tool I use every day because
you're in VSCode.
Yeah, because I'm VSCode and don't do so much.
That's for the old guys to use command lines, right?
Yeah.
But you're developing features like code highlighting and colors in the terminal.
Well,
that
actually,
is against
it is very. But that's been there for like 3 years. The difference is, though, we turned it on by default. Yeah. So everyone noticed it now.
Yeah. So what I think is it's interesting, and I think many people don't remember that you've also already said it. You have a liquid-based integration in SQLcl, so you could perform your changes, get the model, etc. easily to the liquid-based format.
Yeah. And what we did with that support in SQLcl is we actually removed all the default Oracle support and added in based on SQLcl. So if you run a script, back to bug-for-bug compatibility, if you run a script through Liquibase using the script tag, the Oracle script tag, it's actually SQLcl itself running it. And then the other things we did that's different is we actually log in the database every action that's done. So there's a full audit history inside that schema of every command that was ever run.
There are also other solutions, and for example, Liquibase. So I also know Flyway.
Flyway, yeah.
What was the reason you decided? Yeah, you integrated Liquibase and not Flyway.
I honestly can't remember. We did debate the two because they're the two dominant ones out there. I think Flyway was recently bought by Redgate or something at the time, and I want to say they were changing their licensing or something, but I can't remember for sure.
Maybe it's just a number of random questions here in this podcast episode. I'm sorry for you guys. Okay, so I often still see SQL Plus. So many people are still using SQL Plus.
Of course.
And do you say, yeah, it's fine, but you should shift to SQLcl or?
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, if somebody's fingers like typing the extra letters for SQL Plus instead of just SQL, fine, whatever. But then you start showing them the newer features. I mean, for example, just as trivial as the arrow keys work, right? I mean, then people start seeing the value of switching, and then they inherently switch. There's a customer right now. We're still trying to figure out the details of it, but they said they want to switch their 4,700 something developers from SQL Plus to SQLcl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And part of it was they didn't like distributing instant client anymore. The client around, because SQL Plus is C code, it needs the client, it needs all the C, which means it needs all those binaries out on your Windows machines, whereas SQLcl doesn't.
And from the perspective of tools like Git, this whole life cycle thing, and SQLcl, maybe CI/CD pipelines, this whole topic thing, what would be your suggestion?
To do it. So many people don't do it. Right?
Yeah.
So many people, it's too easy not to do it is the problem, right? And it's too easy to have a manual script that installs things, that stands stuff up, that does it.
Yeah.
But if you make the leap into a fully automated pipeline, standing up a QA environment, a test environment, stage environment, all that stuff becomes so trivial. But people, I mean, it comes down to projects and timelines and whatever, right? It depends on how good the management is, maybe project management, to add in time for non-feature development effectively, right? Because do you want the new whiz-bang feature on the screen that spins and whirls and blinks colors, or do you want a pipeline? Depending who you ask that question to, you get different answers.
Yeah. And what I often hear in this case, we just talk about versioning at this time, is, but in database development, you just have one development environment. And if two people are working on the same source, it's a problem, etc., etc. Do you have any ideas, maybe?
Well, some of the things that people are doing now, right, is because PDBs are so cheap, every developer gets a PDB.
Yeah.
Right? Or in Autonomous, or even in OCI in general, if you get a base database, you can spin up a PDB, do your work, extract the changelog from it and destroy it. And you can rinse and repeat that cycle so that you don't have one database with people stomping on each other, because it does get cumbersome, right?
Yeah, I once worked in a project which was set up like this. So we had several PDBs, etc., and it was the best project I ever was database development wise. So, but I just wanted to know if you have any other ideas, because in most cases the customers also don't have time maybe for this stuff, or don't take time.
So like I mentioned, one of the things we're working on is a more prescriptive pattern around Liquibase and arranged change sets and whatnot. And PDBs and things like that implicitly being created as part of that, so that I can initialize an environment. And when I initialize the environment, maybe I do get a PDB automatically, right? So you guys do node code, you do NPM init. Well, think about the same thing if you're doing a database. You could do a project init, and it creates your full environment for you. Basically spits out a connect string, says, go here, do your work. And then at the end, you say commit effectively, right? And we scrape back out everything that changed and do that automatically.
I have a question regarding SQLcl. So that might be some uncovering the truth when I was working with that back in the days. So I wanted to import an Apex application with SQLcl, and I had to go to your blog and use this JavaScript script and import that to SQLcl. And then use that to export and import the Apex application. I don't know if it's in there, built in right now in the product. You're nodding.
It's in there So I did the script twofold. One, to show that you can do it. You can invent your own commands in SQLcl very easily. Two, to allow people to do exactly what you did, which is, hey, just use that script off the shelf and it works. That was ahead of having a proper command first class. So now there's a first class command that does it, which, again, back to history, is it was written, the Apex exporter was written as a standalone piece of Java code way back. And then we iterated it and whatever, and then we pulled it into SQLcl finally, and it's its own full command in there.
Are there any further integrations in SQLcl planned for that? So maybe a copy or something that you can use SQLcl to maybe just control your Apex instance, like create a working copy, create a whole application, deploy to a different environment, or lock an application or something like that?
There's nothing on the plans for it. However, in Ords, so slightly tangent, there are REST APIs now for managing Apex. So that you can turn and toggle an application on or off, like while you're doing a pipeline. So you can turn it off through a REST API, deploy it, and turn it back on.
Yeah.
I think for us to do more there, we'd need more folks to ask for it, because we simply just don't get the demand. And like everybody, we're all busy. So if the demand goes up, we can reprioritize.
For the Apex community, there's kind of an ideas app where we can just type our ideas in. This is not regarding ODS 2, right? So
it's not. So we had something years ago before the Ideas app existed. We called it the SQL Dev Exchange. And we ended up shutting it off because the number of ideas coming in were trickling, and we'd implemented, I want to say, upwards of 800-900 things that people have requested. Maybe we could resurrect something like that. I don't know. But I'm pretty easy to find if someone has an idea. Or Jeff, right? We're pretty easy to find out on social media.
We're going to put your contact details in the show notes so everyone can hit up to that. But so I think the visibility with RDS and all the different framework tools you were talking about is getting way more. So it is getting more attention at all, because it's more integrated with all the Apex environment and so on. Because nowadays you can just create your own environment, Docker containers, and put everything up. And then you are working with RDS easier because of the new, how is it called? The kind of a wizard thing, how to set up RDS.
The new installer, the one that just came out?
Exactly.
Yeah. We get a lot of people confused. I mean, obviously not you guys, but a lot of people, new people, were confused by the way the installer was working. So we took a hard look at it, and it's more like a command line wizard, like you said, kind of walk you through it a little bit easier. Setup's a little easier. Even the switch we did from the old config structure to the new config structure is all about trying to make things easier.
And I think this is a step forward for Apex developers to create own instances. So back in the days, I know that for a job interview of mine, I had to create my own Apex instance because Apex Oracle.com was down back in the days, or I was not...
That was before I started running it. Now I run it. It's never down.
Yeah, and I was installing it on the Windows machine, virtual server in the internet, and I was just figuring out a way how to get this working. And there are a couple of ways to do so. And nowadays, when I try to set up a new Apex environment, it's way easier because the components are well more documented, and you find so many resources to learn how to set up RDS and how it's working together. And then you're just running RDS. Then it's giving you the splash screen. Do you want to go to SQL Developer Web, or you want to go to Apex? And then you have everything up and running, and you have a more in-depth feeling of the different components you need for Apex for up and running. And I think that many people will try to set up a new environment now because it's way easier.
It is much easier. And we have more Dockers coming. So there's currently the Oracle, what is it called? The Oracle Container Registry has a Docker, but there's a number of things that we want to fix about it. So we'll have more of a production-ready Docker very soon too.
Yeah, most of the time when I was using Docker containers to have an environment up and running were from third party, not from Oracle themselves. There were some bash scripts you were extending, and then you just started, and they might use the Oracle containers as a base, and then they just extending it for the configuration part. But if it's easier with the new installer, then I think more people should be able to do it by themselves.
Yeah, but even with the new installer, Dockerizing it is super easy, right? Because then you just start the container and it's up and running. You don't have to worry about a command line to start and stop. And also, if people are on Windows or I guess mostly Windows, right? Because a Mac, you can run Docker command line easier. Yeah, It just helps everything.
Kind of another controversial question. Would you suggest for everyone to use Docker containers, at least for development and testing?
Containers, absolutely. Docker specifically, I don't know. They did funny things with their licensing, right?
Yeah.
Like on my Mac, I run Rancher, which underneath the covers is containers, and it looks and acts just like it. I'm trying to think what I don't do in Docker. I think everything I do for Ords, everything I do, I even run a local database in Docker or in a container. I do everything containerized.
Yeah.
For twofold. One is it's easy, and the other, it keeps my base machine cleaner.
Yeah.
Because it's not littered with stuff all over the place.
But it's just locally, right? So just for your work, you're doing for yourself. So if I'm thinking about a team which is working together, so do you install using Oracle Cloud is the way best solution, I guess. So who are we talking about today? Now, if you're setting up a new instance, so are you just creating one server, install everything on the server and hope that patching and everything works fine and you don't have to reinstall everything? Or do you suggest to say, okay, you are having a development, maybe a testing and a staging server, or Docker containers in Docker? Or do you suggest that this is too serious for use for multiple people to use Docker containers?
Oh, no. So you mentioned apex.oracle.com. Its mid-tiers Ords is fully containerized today. And that's how we run it. The really good thing about Docker's containerizing is should something happen, something unexpected happen, you can roll back to the old version of the container very easily or move forward. Or if you have, I usually tell people to do a minimum of 3, in case one dies, you still have redundancy, right? For HA, you can do rolling upgrades. You can do all of those things so much easier by doing containers.
You're out of questions, Kris.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
All right. Yeah. I think we talked about many different technologies and products you are supporting. And
all over the place.
We got all the different new information no one heard before. So we can try to get another feature which is currently unannounced, but I think
another new thing.
Yeah, another new thing.
Let's see. So one of the things that I'm pushing inside Oracle is, well, two things, although they're related, but they're slightly different, is a better developer portal for all of Oracle. Our current portal could be better. And then married with that is we're trying to make a developer portal skin, if you will, on top of database in OCI. So when you log into OCI today, the OCI console is very operationally focused. Create this, destroy this, start this, stop that, right? It's very little to help the people working with the database, the developers working with it. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is how to make a developer portal for that database. So what are the most common things you need to do? Go figure, you have to connect to a database. If you go look at the portal today, we could do better helping people learn how to connect to the database, right? Because the data is all there, but it's not very organized in an obvious way. So, or if you look at other frameworks like Spring, if you go to spring.io, start.spring.io, they have like a jumpstart page. It's like, oh, I want to do JDBC, I want to do this, I want to do that. We're working on, in this same portal again, kind of those types of jumpstarts. So I want to write Python code against this autonomous database. Well, we can generate you the stub of getting going and that kind of thing.
Kind of bootstrapping.
Bootstrapping.
Yeah.
We're using the word scaffolding. I don't know if it's the best word, but bootstrap, scaffold, jumpstart, all those types of things. So that's something else that's in the works that should be fun.
Okay, great. I think we pressed now everything out of Kris. So we're happy if you are. Yeah, I hope your sessions on this conference are working fine. And
yeah,
you have
this is always a great conference to come to.
That's pretty great. And yeah, thank you, Caro.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you, Kris, and thank you to all of our listeners. MKBHD would say see you or hear you in the next one. We see each other. Thank you, both of you, and to our listeners, and have a great day.